beloved Vice Chancellor of Maalan Narayanan University, my dear good friend and guide, philosopher, Dr. JMTV, members of the faculty of this college, and beloved friends and students. When I entered this college and when I entered this guest lounge, many thoughts and emotions are crossing my mind. This is the place, this is the college where eminent freedom fighters, they are mentioning about Bashim and then Kalki, the pioneer in Tamil journalism. When he was in teens, he came all the way from Maalan to study in this college, and he left the college in the middle to take part in the freedom struggle. Which place would be more appropriate to talk about the role of media in the freedom movement? Dear friends, it's my pleasant privilege to be here with you to share your thoughts on the role of media in the freedom movement. Since those thoughts are crossing in my mind about this institution, which is 100 years old, wherein Mahatma Gandhi visited here 3 times. His breath must be somewhere in the air here. With all pride, I am wearing this. I don't want to lose this complete speech. It is very thoughtful. It's a very thoughtful initiative of the organizers of this Social Science Congress to include a topic like the role of media in the freedom struggle. Because no discussion on freedom struggle would be complete without discussing the role of media. I thank them profusely for this initiative and the arrangements they have made. I was a witness to today's morning session and had very inspiring thoughts from the speakers, some of which I have shared with Professor Ryan today. And I sensed for a long, India's ancient knowledge system was either degraded or denied due acknowledgement by the West. Now today I hear from the various scientists who spoke in the morning the need and urge for India's ancient knowledge system to be recognized globally. And I'm sure with these pioneers we will be able to achieve that very, very soon. Friends, it is talking about the media. Friends, it is neither an astonishing coincidence or nor a historical accident that almost all the leaders who led the freedom movement were journalists. Shunning away the modesty, I would like to rephrase this sentence as it was the journalists who led India to have freedom as their leaders. This is not a tall climb because of fraternal affinity. I am a practicing journalist. Naturally, I have my affinity for my fraternity, but this is not a climb made out of fraternal affinity. I will tell you a few names, and you yourself can draw your inferences on that. You don't have to take my word on that. Dadabhai Naoroji was the founder editor of a journal called Ras Gafar. He was the editor of Ras Gafar. Bal Tilak was the founder of Asia. Lala Lajpat Rai was the founder of two newspapers, People and Punjabi. J. Subramanian was the founder of the Hindu and Sudesi. Baldeyar was the editor of India. Dr. Annie Besant was the founder of Home Rule and Desabhakti. And Arvind Ghosh was the editor of Vande Mataram. Jawaharlal Nehru was the founder of National Army. Mahatma Gandhi was the editor of Navjeevan Young India edition. Maalan Narayanan was the founder and editor of the magazine called Makhi. C. Rajagopalachari was the founder of a magazine called Emotion. Now you can decide, you can validate my statement that it was journalists who led the freedom movement as leaders. And we should remember here that journalists were not just fighting for the freedom for the country, but they were also fighting for their own freedom. Leaving out the 70 and odd polygar wars between the polygars, in Tamil we call them as Padayakaras, with the polygars and the East India Company. It was the journalists who gave an all India character to the freedom movement. Rajaram Mohan Rai was the first Indian to write in English. Founded two newspapers in 1823, one in Bengali and one in Persian. The moment he founded that newspaper, the East India Company came with an order which said the contents of the newspaper must get the prior approval of the establishment of the company. Rajaram Mohan Rai went to the Supreme Court against that order, and he was joined by 70 intellectuals from across the country. That was the beginning point, wherein freedom was thought as a concept, and freedom was a new concept called nationalism was born from that point. And the another factor we should remember here is many of the acts against the press was promulgated in 1823, starting from 1823. The media, Indian press was fighting for the country's freedom consistently for over 100 years, starting from 1857 to 1942. That is from the first war of independence to the 50 years. But many of the orders were passed even before the birth of the papers. Say, for example, in 1857, there was a Hindi paper called Samachar, and a Persian paper and an Urdu paper. They published a decree of Baldur Rasa, who was asking the people to work to drive the British out of this country. They were penalized for that. They were drawn to court for that, and they were prosecuted for sedition. This happens in 1857. Friends, you must also remember these gag orders, this repression has not stopped the Indian press from writing it. In fact, the authoritarianism has not deterred the Indian press. On the contrary, repression led to flourish. Say, if you look at this, there was a very notorious order, many of my journalist friends here might be knowing, that was called the gagging order of Lord Canning, which was passed soon after the 1857, First War of Independence. It was passed in 1857, but in the 2 decades that followed, many newspapers appeared. To cite some examples, Times of India was founded in 1861. 1857 was the First War of Independence, and the gag order came in 1857, gag order of Canning. Times of India appeared in 1861. Amritsar Patrika appeared in 1868. Statesman appeared in 1875. The Hindu appeared in 1878. The Tribune appeared in 1881. All these papers spoke the language what the British know. They were all English journals. But the Indian language newspapers were not lagging behind them. Many Indian language newspapers emerged with more vigor. According to the Indian Office record, which is the British record, in 1873, there were 224 Indian language newspapers published from various parts of the country. So British government appointed translators to find out what is written in these Indian language newspapers, because English newspapers they themselves can read, but this they can't read. So they appointed translators to translate and tell them what is written in there. Because of that, they came out with an order, they came out with an act called Vernacular Act, 1878. This act was drafted by one British governor, who later became governor. His name was called Ashley Eden. The popular Eden Gardens in Calcutta is named after him. Ashley Eden drafted this act. And he said, what was seditious news was to be determined by police and not by judiciary. That was a very candid point he made in his act. The party affected could not seek court of law, because what is seditious is to be decided not by the judiciary but by the police. So you have no business to approach the court for this. That was the act. At the time of passing the act, actually then summoned Sisir Kumar Ghosh, who was the founder of Maalan. He offered a suggestion to Mr. Ghosh, saying that I will be glad to write in your paper regularly. I will be very considerate to you, but in turn, you should give me powers of judging the editorial to me. For that, Sushil Kumar Ghosh told me there ought to be at least, I can't do that, because there ought to be at least one honest journalist in the time. But I would say that Mr. Ghosh was mistaken, because when the act was passed, when laws pertaining to publishing the news become more strident, journalists devised various other methods to pass on the message. Some of them took to creative writing, some of them took to street plays. And 134 people, out of which 15 of them were government employees, 21 of them were planters, 8 Christian missionaries, 13 zemindars, 72 farmers, submitted their depositions before the Lead Commission. Even though the Commission for the first time in history laid the blame on the European indigo planters for their extra-legal activities, it however acknowledged the need for British Empire and did not deem it necessary to enact the laws. So all these struggles, which I was describing earlier, all these struggles of these press, you must remember all these happened before the advent of a structured political party. Indian National Congress had its first session in Mumbai in 1885, but all these struggles of the press happened even before a political party emerged in this country, and that it is no surprise. So the frontliners in the first session of the Indian National Congress were journalists. And the first resolution in the Indian National Congress was moved by Mr. P. Subramanian, the editor of the Hindu. The second resolution was moved by Chibulkar, who was a journalist from Pune. The third resolution was moved by no less a person called Dadabhai Naoroji, who was the founder of the Rashtra. And the fourth resolution was proposed by Dadabhai Naoroji himself. So in the years that followed, many presidents were either editors or publishers or founders of the newspapers. To cite a few examples, Sarosha Mehta, who was the editor of the Bombay Chronicle, Maalan Narayanan, who was the founder of Hindustan, which later became Hindustan Times, Lala Lajpat Rai, who was the founder of Punjabi, Motilal Nehru, who was the founder of the Leader, Annie Besant, who was the founder of New India and Home, were the presidents of the Indian National Congress for quite many years. The arrival of Indian National Congress gave a momentum to the nationalist movement, and it picked up in 1900. Sensing the protest is gathering steam, British law came up with more repressive acts, one after another. To cite something, Criminal Law Amendment Act was passed at 1908, Press Act 1910, and which made 5 lakh fine was paid by newspapers to the British Raj. See, if you look at the history of Indian press, you will find that refusing to budge to the gag orders and the threat of dumping down in presence, Indian press has played an invigorating role consistently for a century, for over 100 years. In every war, every battle in the War of Independence, for example, the protests against the partition of Bengal, the protests against the Rowlatt Act, protests against the support for the civil disobedience movement, and during the Quit India movement, the underground radios that sprouted. And Ramanohar Lohia and Achyut Patwardhan were playing a leading role in that underground radio. And every one of us are familiar with Madam Vigati Kama's Paris Indian Society, which designed our flag at one time. And Benjamin Guy Honeyman, who was a British journalist, who was working for Daily Herald. He smuggled the photographs of the Jallianwala Bagh and gave it to the British press. And when it was published, a huge uproar happened in Britain. See, these are not just restricted to the national newspapers. Talking about Tamil newspaper to which fraternity I belong. See, the historians have classified Indian freedom movement into 4 phases. The first phase is the phase by Hume, who was believed, the Octavian Hume, who was one of the founders of Congress. He believed in public will and patriotism, so he thought we can counter the British through that. The second phase, Tilak became a little more aggressive and he said, we will not accept anything less than Purna Swaraj. And the third phase, Annie Besant suggested home rule. And the fourth phase was of the Mahatma Gandhi, who mobilized millions of Indians into the freedom struggle. These are the 4 phases of the War of Independence, classified by many historians. But if you look at Tamil, every phase had a paper to support this stand. Swadesanitran and J. Subramanian were supporting the Octavian Hume's views, because J. Subramanian himself is one of the founders of the Congress Party. I would like to recall Maulvi Muhammad Bakr. Many of us might not have heard this name because this happened long back in 1857. He was reporting the first war of independence in a paper, in a Urdu paper called Delhi Urdu Akhbar. And he was writing in incognito because he was working for the British at the time, so he can't write his name. But they have identified him. The British identified who had written that report. He wrote an on-the-spot report. He saw by his own eyes how the mutiny was happening. So he wrote an eyewitness account and in a pseudonym. But he was identified by the British, and then he was shot before the cannons. He secluded himself because he was suffering by leprosy. He did not want to contribute to others, so he secluded himself and was taking a remote place near Kutralam. And soon he lost his eyesight too. Even after losing his eyesight, he was arrested again under the sedition charges. His end was akin to the Greek style. I again bow my head in reverence to these unsung and unknown heroes of Indian journalism, whose contributions to India's independence movement was no lesser than our esteemed pioneers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.